Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I have a guest here to tell her remarriage story. Samara Stone is a mentor for full-grown women, and I want to hear all about that. Samara, welcome to the podcast. Please tell the listeners who you are and what you do.
Oh, goodness, Sade, thank you so much for having me. When I saw the invite, I was like, oh, wow, how cool is this? So I'm very, very happy to be here. I have been a clinical social worker and owned a therapy business for about 17 or 18 years. So I'm very steeped in the mental health field. One of the things that I think makes my work a bit different is that I teach other therapists how to build private practices, how to create their own businesses, how to create brands for themselves, and to really be strategic about business building. My newest project, and you alluded to that in the introduction piece, is Full Grown. BeFullGrown.com is a space, it's a curated space for women over 40 that are really serious about designing a life that they love, like really making the second half of their lives ones that are full of intention and adventure and self-discovery. And so that's what Full Grown is about. And I love that project. It is the fruit of my heart. It is the thing that I feel like I was most meant to do.
Yeah, and I loved the words full grown because, like I was telling you earlier, after my divorce, I went on this recovery, coaching, therapy. I did all the things. I read all the books. I did all the things. And that led me to becoming a coach. But I could feel the shifts inside of myself, just emotionally and mentally, that felt like I was growing up, like I was becoming a real adult.
That's right. That's right. Oftentimes in our minds, we shy away from challenging situations. Who wants pain, right? But oh my goodness, it is the space where we do our best growth. Like that valley experience is where we get the rich, rich soil that helps us to reach higher in life. And so I think you're right. It's those difficult challenges that help us to really level up.
Yeah.
No one sits around and reflects on all of the easygoing, challenge-free days. Like they're not, later in life, like, remember that day when nothing happened? No one does that, right? But people are like, remember that day when it all happened.
Yeah. A lot of my listeners and my clients tend to have like challenges with people pleasing, codependency. Yep. And we don't always recognize that that's like an arrested development situation.
Yes,
like,
it is.
You're kind of acting like a kid here.
It's so funny. I talk about that a lot in my work with Full Grown. So I love that you are narrowing in on that. I feel like we're given this template when we're kids of what we're supposed to do, what the good girls do, what the timelines of life, all of those things that guide our decision-making prior to 30. Like, it's like, no, this is, you have to have all of these accomplished by the time you're 35 years old, or clearly you suck at life, right? In those templates, we also have ideas about what those roles should require of us, how I'm supposed to be as a wife, how I'm supposed to be as a mom, as a friend, as a daughter, as a colleague, as an employee. And sometimes those nice patterns don't serve us well.
Right. They may not even be right for us.
No.
There's something on the outside telling us who we are supposed to be, and it's not who we are on the inside.
It's not, hence unhappiness. I can't tell you how many people I meet that are in their 40s or 40-ish, even women who are in their mid-30s still fall into this experience where they kind of realize that the ladder they've been climbing, whether it's the corporate ladder, the family ladder, the relationship ladder that they are climbing, is on the wrong mountain. And you're like, I don't even want this thing that I've been striving so for. Goodness. I don't even like it. Like, why did I sign up for this? It doesn't even fit me. And that's where that self-discovery is everything. It takes a lot of bravery, though, to grow up and be who you really are.
100%. All right, but we're not here to talk about that today. So listeners, you wouldn't know this anyway, but I've been following Samara for a while, just on Facebook. We became friends, and I don't know, I liked her personality. I just read her posts. And then one day, this post popped up, getting married. I'm like, wait, what? How'd that happen? And I kind of followed your wedding and the pictures. And then I was like, I just want to have her on the podcast to come tell this story. So I don't even know your divorce story. Much less your remarriage story. So just tell us all the things. What happened? How did we get here?
I think like most women who I met my ex-husband when I was probably about 22 years old. And so the life that we created was one that I agreed to at a time before I knew much of anything about myself, much of anything about what would make for good life partners. And he's a wonderful human being, just not really the right fit for me.
Mm.
And it was interesting over the years. I think I always say that we're like family. We're not husband and wife, but we were like family, like friends that
Mm.
kind of had these children together, and we moved through the motions of trying to
Mm.
care for them. But much like what you said about people pleasing, in my mind, I had an expectation of myself that I had to take care of everything. And I did. And there was no balance in that, right? Like I just literally took on all of the responsibility for all of the heavy things that had to do with the three children we had and home and whatnot. And I didn't, between business and family obligations, I really didn't make much space for myself at all.
Mm.
And so I always say that I feel like we were checked out of being married long before we actually got divorced, and I think that's the story with a lot of longtime married people.
Mhm.
Like they may technically be married, but they're not actually living a full relationship. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
the relationship itself is not growing, it's not vibrant.
Mm.
It's more, I call it
Yeah.
logistics. I'm always telling my husband, like when we might have a day where all we talk about is logistics. And I'm like, this is not, this is
Yeah,
not what
like
we signed up for.
that's
We're
right.
not here for the logistics.
It's true. And I'll tell you, I think we accept that. I know for me, I accepted that as what was supposed to be normal. Like,
Mm,
oh, all that being in love and feeling passionate, that stuff's for TV. Like human beings don't,
mm,
marriages aren't like that. Because mine wasn't. I just assumed nobody's was,
yeah.
Um, and it was interesting over time. I think right around 42 is when I started wanting more for my life. I really did. I was like, I don't like the way this is set up. It's all obligation, it's all responsibility, and there's no space for me in this life. And I
Mm,
think some people call it a midlife crisis, but I call it the fullness of growth. Like you're becoming full grown. You're like, no, I'm actually becoming my whole self now and not
mm,
these compartments, these parts. And so I remember I was at the grocery store getting stuff for a client VIP day. I always do get fruit and cheese and stuff like that for VIP days. But I was getting stuff for a VIP day. And this man just hands me his card. He's an acupuncturist and a massage therapist. And he's like, yeah, why don't you check me out? And I was like, oh, I had never been someone that even looked at anything other than what was happening with my husband in marriage. I,
mhm,
I wasn't a person who had affairs or looked at men. I just didn't. I just was busy doing work and taking care of my children. And even
mhm,
with this man, I don't think that crossed my mind. But as we started having conversations, and he was asking me things like, well, what do you do to take care of yourself?
mm.
And I had no answers,
Yeah.
none. And over time, as we continued talking and I was working with him in different capacities, I was like, he kept challenging me to grow in the directions that I wanted to grow. And I
Mm,
was like, man, I'm going to pursue this. I'm going to pursue this. And all the while, I know this is odd, but I had been talking to my ex-husband about this. It wasn't something that he wasn't aware
mhm.
of. He just didn't, I won't say he
So when
didn't
you
care.
say something that he wasn't aware of, like what was he aware of?
He knew when I met this person. He knew when I met this person and that I was enjoying conversation with him. And he knew that.
What was his response? Like, this is all new to like.
No, he's not a very emotional or communicative person. And so he really,
Mm,
when I say that he didn't care, people will think that that sounds callous. And I don't think that it's particularly callous. It's that within his structure,
it wasn't a thing.
it was not a thing. It was
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
But I think that's a part of how you can see that
Right.
perhaps,
But
right.
I was gonna say, so there was a lot of things that were not a thing over all those
Exactly,
years.
exactly. And more than that, I think it was just time. We'd really,
Mm,
really outgrown this space. And for me, the fact that I was even open to entertaining conversation elsewhere was for me a huge red flag that I need to leave this. This is not right for me. And so, as
mm,
opposed to being the person who had affairs, I really did become the person who chose divorce. you know.
Wow.
And we agreed amicably. I think we had the most amicable divorce that anyone's ever seen. Like, we sat down, we wrote our separation agreement with our three
Mhm.
children and our cars and how we were going to do the things. We submitted that to the court. 90 days later, the divorce was final. There's no lawyer, no
That is a
fighting.
blessing. That really is a blessing.
Because when it's time to be complete and it's ready, and both people are ready
Mhm.
to undo, there's no fight. There is no fight.
Right.
There was no fight.
And if it's going to end anyway,
Let it end well. End well.
right?
And I think
Why end it with bruises and pain and hurting the other person? And some people choose to do that. They choose to punish the other person
mhm,
for making that choice, or they choose to hurt the other person for calling them out and saying, hey, you're doing all these things and I'm not here for
mhm.
this.
Yeah. I think for us both, we both knew that this was not really it wasn't really a full marriage, if you understand. Like, it
Mhm.
wasn't. And so when it was time to release it, I remember at one point him saying to me, "You don't owe me anything. You owe me
Wow.
nothing. We've worked together to have these children. uh, it's peace." And even now, and this is why I know mine is a very unorthodox story. It's atypical, but it's a very peaceful dynamic. Every now and then we might have a disagreement around something regarding one of our children, but we co-parent peacefully. There's no friction.
Mhm.
There's no drama. There's no anger. There's no bitterness. We were just complete,
Yeah.
and we'd been complete. And so this was just the
Yeah.
undoing of a story that had already run its course.
Wow.
I know that's not the typical, but it I'll tell you, I was so grateful to be brave enough to make the change, because often those situations where there's no big impetus, there's no painful,
Mm.
awful thing to knock you off the pedestal, people just stay in status quo, in
Yes.
unhappiness, and they don't choose more. They just keep what they
Yeah.
had. And for
Yeah.
me, I knew that my life was severely limited by me being in that dynamic. I knew that. And he did too. Even when we would talk, and he would just say, you want a much bigger life than what I'm interested in, you know?
Mhm.
And he's right, I did. And so since that divorce, some 4 or 5 years later, that's what I've been doing, is creating that life that I wanted for myself.
Yeah.
Um,
Could you have created that life within that marriage? Like, what
I
were the
tried.
elements of that life that you wanted that you couldn't?
I tried, but I tell you, and that's why having the right partner matters, right? Because we were on two totally separate planes when it came to how to navigate certain things in life. And so you can't really move in concert with someone where you don't have agreement. You just
Mm.
don't have agreement. Now, I did. I still had my own life as an entrepreneur. I traveled, I grew my business. But when I say we had two separate, completely separate lives,
Mhm.
so that whole aspect of life that has to do with love and emotion and intimacy and connection, that was just not a part of my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was
And
okay.
it's I like to look, I always, this is my theory about the heart, is that you can't really compartmentalize. So if one part is suffering, it's seeping into everything.
It does. And I'm glad you put it that way, because as I've looked at what's been happening since I did make space in my life for love, and that I did kind of entertain the possibility that I actually could have a relationship and have one that was alive and fresh like that, my business has grown, my health
Mm.
has improved, my like so many things about my life have changed. And I think it's because I've stretched my capacity for love. I've grown my
Wow.
capacity. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's shift gears
Yes, yes, yes.
to Mr. Right. What
Yes.
was that journey like?
A lot of conversation. I always say we started having a conversation and we have not stopped, and we're still talking all the time. I think
Mm.
he too was an entrepreneur, right? And someone who had the same kind of belief systems that I did about the universe and the world around us and how humans interact with one another. We just saw life the same. And so those conversations were helpful for me and helpful for him, right? Because he too, I mean, I won't tell his story, but he too had come from a divorce. His was much more painful than what mine was, but he too had been divorced years prior. And I think had never thought about there being love in his life. And so originally, we both even said to each other, we're just going to be friends. And he said, I'll never ask you to marry me. And I was like, great, that's awesome, because I don't want to be married. Like, perfect. I even told my kids, I was like, mom's never get married again. They're like, okay, mom, cool. And then he proposed, and they're like, what happened to that? but I think that over time, I really started to see we have so many similar values and ways of being.
Mm-hmm.
Life is easier with him. Life is easier with him. And his desire to take care of me, and which is completely different than what I was familiar with, it changed the game for me. I started feeling safe in a way that I never had, really never had.
I like to use the word effortless. Like when
Very
you are with that person, and it's so hard to imagine how effortless it can be until you have it.
Yep, it's true. Even just the ability to see, when you see life with an alignment in their values, it's easy to talk about things. It's easy to make decisions about what's important to do. I mean, I love the way we blended our families. We have a lot of travel and adventure in our lives. We really have a lot of fun, and we do it in a way that helps one another grow. And so to me, I wouldn't have imagined that marriage could feel like this. And I don't think that I wasn't even looking to be in any kind of relationship. I actually fancied myself wanting to be a free woman out in the world. No obligations to any old thing at all, but apparently that's not
that wasn't in the cards.
What was in store for me.
How long was it from the day you met your husband to when you got married?
Let me see. And now I got to do some math. October 18th.
Too busy having fun. Time flies.
It was 3 years and 4 months.
Okay.
3 years and 4 months. And honestly, the first 2 years of that time frame, well, I would say the first year and a half, we were in relationship. We had even started living together. That part was fine because I left my home, the house that I built, I left and moved around the corner. And so we had spent time together. We were in a whole relationship, but I don't think either of us were thinking in terms of this means we need to be married. It just kept being the natural next thing to do. Do you know what I mean? Like the next steps. That's why that word effortless makes such good sense. It was a no-brainer. It was like, oh, of course we're going to do this together. Oh, of course we're going to do that. Oh, of course of course.
Yeah.
It just kept falling into place like that. And I think once I came back home and I renovated the entire property as I came back home, because I really wanted it to have a completely different energy, and it does. The before and afters for this property are amazing, but because my life had changed so much, and I wanted this home to be a physical representation of that transformation, and it has been. But once he moved back in, I was kind of like, wow, like this, my life has done a complete flip-flop in a matter of 2 years, right? And one that if someone had told me about prior, I would have been like, no way, no, I'm not doing that. But as I started moving forward with life, it made sense. And you can feel when something is for you, when it's good for you. You can sense it in your body, in your mind, in your spirit. There's peace. And that's how you know you are moving in the right direction. And it's been a positive experience for me that this whole journey has been positive. And I can't say the relationship is perfect. There are areas where we're still growing like any other relationship. But man, even those challenges, I can so see how they're perfectly aligned with the areas where I want to grow and improve.
Yeah, I love that. So in my coaching community, there's a question we like to ask.
Okay.
Just because in the dating world, it seems like a lot of things happen. People perceive a lot of things happening by luck. Like, oh, well, she just got lucky. And your stories, there's pieces of it that sound a little like that, but I know there's no luck. As a coach, I know there's always an inner transformation.
Yes.
That precipitates What
That's what
happened?
I'm so
So
glad.
I want to know about yours.
That's what I was about to say. 2 years before I met this person, I had already internally started deciding I choose more. I choose more for my life. And it started with my business. I made big changes in my business before I met this person. I made big changes in how I was managing my health. And so I was already on this journey of leveling up. And so meeting this person really just was another compliment to what I was already building.
100%. 100%. I mean, like literally that is always the true story.
Yep.
It's always the true story. It's not something outside of ourselves. It's not someone, and I even coached someone on this morning where she was talking about the men that she was meeting were not delivering. And I'm like, no, your new relationship is something you deliver to yourself.
Yep.
You have to shift into the woman.
That's right.
Who delivers that.
With confidence and clarity. You know, like I think for me knowing how I wanted my life to feel made it easy for me to be brave in making bold changes, because I knew what I didn't want. I knew what was no longer going to serve. And I figured whatever I was going to create would be better than what I was leaving behind. Right. Yeah. And that's been the case. I'm telling, like, for me, the relationship is one aspect of a full-grown life. It has been business, it has been health, spiritual growth and development, and love and relationships, even parenting, all these areas of my life, even boundaries with family members. All of these things have been a part of this full-grown status.
Leveling up. And so what I hear you saying is we can reach for that. Like it doesn't have to be a reactive, okay, I'm putting out this fire and putting out that fire and putting out that fire. We can be like, okay, I'm going to rise above everything that's happening.
It's so true. It's so true. And I think, honestly, I like what you said about the relationship you want to have begins with you. It's not about the other human being that you're going to eventually connect with. It's about this human being right here and how you're relating to yourself, how you're relating to life, that I think opens you to draw in a partner that resonates with that. That's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I say it in like a couple of different ways. One of the ways that I've said it to my clients is, listen, you have to know what it feels like to be cared for, to be loved, to have love in your life, which, because we use the word self-care, now we're throwing it around and who knows what it means to all the people who use it. But when you feel within yourself that you're loved, you're cared for by yourself, you will recognize so easily the man who is doing the same.
And won't tolerate otherwise. You know, it's so funny. Like my 22-year-old self made a choice that my 44-year-old self was like, oh, no, man. No. Because the imbalance, you know, the overworking, the over responsibility, the lack of care and the lack of emotional connection, I would not select that for me right now. You know, and so the previous marriage, while a wonderful human being, that would not have been, oh my God, that would not have been what I would call satisfying for myself right now as a full-grown woman.
Yes.
You know, and it took me a while to forgive myself for what I allowed for many years, you know, to just remember that I was young, right? And I was learning, and what I didn't know is okay. You can't be mad at yourself for what you don't know when you don't know it. Yeah. But, you know, just to celebrate being brave enough to make changes at the time when I did.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That is so, so powerful. So your new family.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about how that's going. You are a blended family. I know there's always some work there. It doesn't matter how beautiful it is.
Yes, it is. And it's so interesting because, I don't know if you follow astrology at all, or if you're ever aware of any of that kind of stuff, but the way that the alignment between these two families has been very interesting. I have children that are Pisces, Libra, and Taurus, and he has children that are Pisces, Libra, and Taurus. And so our children's birthdays are really kind of knit together. It's very, very interesting. But we have two that are 16. I have boys. He has girls. So we have a pair that are 16. We have a pair that literally are just turning 19 now. They just hit 18 and 19. He is a girl. I have a boy. And then he has a girl that's much older. She's 23. And then I have a daughter who's 11. So that was interesting. Her being the one young child in the midst of all this teenage energy, that's been interesting. But I think the kids, what's been cool about them, because they pair up in those the core four have the 16 and the 18s, they really created friendships with each other. They really did. And so we would do things like pizza night. We went horseback riding. We went out to the beach. This was before COVID. Like we were very intentional in going places and doing things that allow them to share experiences. And it made a huge difference in them bonding. Now, they didn't always his girls didn't always like me so much. My boys were a little side eye at him, but the kids did fine.
I love it. Isn't that the way it always is?
Yeah, it's true. And then here in the house, like I said, we renovated the house when we moved back in here. It's a really large house. And so everyone has space. I think that's been what's beautiful. My younger daughter has her own room. The boys have a room. The girls have a room. And my mom lives with us too. So it's a multi-generational home. And 1 week we have all the kids. It's like 5 children here 1 week. And then the next week we have none.
They're all gone. Oh my gosh. Time to yourselves.
That's the best one. And it's actually neat because when they're here, it's kid time. This is our time to focus on the children. We try to do activities with them and watch movies, go shoot pool, whatever we're going to do that week with the kids. But then like this week where there's no children, you hear that silence.
Yes, I hear it.
The quiet, it's a good balance. It really is a good balance.
Right. So it's almost like the structure has given you like all of that time to nurture the relationship. It's almost already built in.
And even to like, we travel a lot, like every other month we are someplace. And so we always go on our not kid week, that's what we do. And then this time we are taking them, since we just got married in Vegas in February, we got married. But now we're actually going to take all of them on a cruise in April. So we're the kids were always like, you guys are always going someplace. Do we not ever
get to come? What's happening?
Ever? So they're all coming, and my mom, we're all going on a cruise.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
What's the most surprising thing to you? And I know this is a completely different experience, but if you were to, talk to yourself, 4 years ago, what would she be most surprised by?
Honestly, my capacity for love and intimacy. Because that wasn't a part of my life, and it had never been a part of my adult life, I really didn't think it was real. I know that sounds crazy, but I would see people having these experiences like, oh, you're so in love. Like, I just didn't.
Yeah, it seems fake because you don't have a frame of reference for it.
That's exactly it. And so if there's one thing that it's the capacity for love, it's the resilience of love for me. And just the ability to really be friends and feel so connected to someone. If 5 years ago, before I met him, if someone had mentioned to me that there'd be this person you're going to meet and this kind of relationship will develop, I wouldn't believe it. But I have really been transformed in my thinking about the capacity of love and its power to help transform other areas of your life.
Oh, so good. So good. Samara, this has been like an experience for me because I didn't hear your story before. So it's always like, I'm just like, this is a roller coaster ride.
Yes.
I really just want to appreciate you and thank you for coming on and telling my listeners your story and sharing so much from your heart and your life.
Yes.
If you were to give just all of my ladies, and they're all at all spectrums of divorce, all types of divorce, just a word of advice for their journey, what would it be?
You create your life. You create it. It is within your capacity to do so. And so whatever you like or don't like, choose. Choose.
That is so good. That is so good. Thank you. Please tell the listeners again what you do, where they can find you, and then we're going to link up all of your links in the show notes for the episode.
Excellent, excellent. They can find me at befullgrown.com. That's a community that's curated for women over 40 or 40-ish that are ready to create their own lives, right? Ones that they've designed that are full of all the self-awareness, adventure, and full experiences that they need to be full grown. So that's where they can find me. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Be Full Grown.
Thank you so much, Samara.
Thank you.
Listeners, please follow Samara Stone all over the internet. Check out her program, Be Full Grown, at befullgrown.com. I love it when it's all the same.
Yes.
Wherever you
Be
go,
full grown.
follow her on Instagram. Like, Samara, you are just a bright light. You're just such a shining star. I'm so glad I'm connected to you. I'm so glad you were willing to come on the podcast. And I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Sade. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Listeners, I want to thank you for your time and attention today, and I will see you next time.